The stars above Earth had always been a peaceful sight. To most people, they were just distant pinpricks of light, a reminder of how small humanity truly was in the vastness of space. Yet for Dr. Elena Kaur, an astrophysicist working at the Earth Space Observatory, the stars had always meant something more. They were a map, a guide to the mysteries of the universe. But she never imagined that one of those distant stars would bring something so terrifying. It all started when Elena detected a strange signal from deep space, coming from the outer reaches of the solar system. It wasn't like anything she had ever seen before. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. And it wasn't from any human spacecraft. It was an alien transmission. Elena couldn't believe it. She thought she was mistaken at first, but after hours of analysis, the signal's origin became clear. A fleet of ships, massive and growing closer with every passing day. Who could it be? Elena wondered aloud as she stared at the data on her screen. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of the signal. It wasn't a friendly communication, but it didn't feel like an attack either. Still, she knew it was something serious. Her instincts told her that this was no ordinary alien encounter. After contacting her superiors at the observatory, they dismissed her concerns at first. It's probably just another asteroid or space debris, they'd assured her, but Elena knew better. There was something about the signal that felt too purposeful, too precise. She pushed harder, urging the authorities to take her warning seriously. Finally, after several tense days, Earth's leaders took notice. In a high-security meeting at the United Nations, the situation was laid out before the global leaders. The message was clear. A fleet of ships, the size of which no one had ever seen, was heading toward Earth. The fleet was moving fast, and it was getting closer by the hour. The Draconians, a species known for their conquests and ruthless expansion, were on their way. No one had ever heard of the Draconians before. Earth had encountered a few alien species over the years, some friendly, others neutral. But the Draconians were different. They were known across the galaxy for their advanced technology and their unrelenting pursuit of dominance. No one had ever dared to challenge them. And now, Earth was in their sights. "Elena, are you sure about this?" asked General Marcus Hale, the head of Earth's defense forces. His face was grim as he looked at Elena, who nodded firmly. "I'm certain. I've been tracking them for days. The fleet is real, and they're coming." There was a long silence in the room. The Draconians' reputation alone was enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Their fleet was said to have wiped out entire civilizations in the past, leaving nothing but ashes behind. Earth, with its relatively small population and limited resources, seemed like an easy target. The leaders of Earth knew that they had no choice but to act. The Draconians were coming, and if they didn't find a way to defend themselves, Earth could be lost. The world's governments quickly came together to form a united front, pooling their military resources and technological expertise. But as they did, the truth began to sink in. Earth's best weapons were no match for an empire that had conquered countless planets across the galaxy. "We need a miracle," Elena said softly to herself as she watched the data streaming in from the observatory. The Draconian fleet was now just days away from Earth. The time to prepare was running out. The world's military leaders began making desperate plans. They would launch a series of satellites into orbit, setting up powerful defense systems to protect major cities. They would ready nuclear missiles, hoping to use Earth's most powerful weapon as a last resort. But deep down, Elena knew it wouldn't be enough. The Draconians had technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. The odds of winning a direct confrontation were slim to none. As the days passed, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She felt a strange sense of dread, as if the universe was warning her of an impending disaster. But she wasn't ready to give up. She refused to believe that Earth, a planet that had fought through so many struggles, would simply fall without a fight. "The galaxy may underestimate us," she said quietly, "but they've never seen humans fight with everything we have." With every passing moment, Earth's fate seemed more uncertain. The Draconian fleet grew closer, and humanity's hope for survival hung by a thread. Yet, one thing was clear: Earth would not go down without a fight. As the world braced for the unknown, Alina made a vow to herself. She would find a way to fight back. She wasn't sure how, but she knew that humanity's spirit was strong enough to overcome any challenge. And if there was one thing she was certain of, it was that the Draconians would soon learn just how resilient humans could be. The day the Draconians arrived in Earth's orbit, everything changed. For decades, humanity had looked up at the stars, wondering if they were truly alone in the universe. Now, they knew the answer. The Draconian fleet was real, and they were coming to Earth. Dr. Elena Kaur sat in her small office at the Earth Space Observatory, watching the large screen in front of her. She could see the massive fleet hovering in the distance, their ships forming a tight formation around the planet. It looked like a sea of metal, shining with a cold, unfeeling gleam. There were hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The world was on edge. Governments had already begun to prepare for the worst, sending military forces into full alert. Satellite defenses were being readied, and cities were beginning to evacuate. Yet despite the chaos on the ground, the Draconians had not made a move. They simply watched. Then, at exactly 12:00 p.m., Earth received a transmission from the Draconians. The message was simple but chilling. It was delivered in a strange, harsh language. But Alina, with her expertise in alien communication, quickly decoded it. Submit to the Draconian Empire. Surrender your planet. All resistance is futile, the message stated. For a moment, there was silence in the observatory as Alina replayed the transmission. It was clear that the Draconians were not looking for a peaceful solution. They were offering no negotiation, no terms of peace. They had already made up their minds. Earth would either submit or face destruction. The United Nations convened a meeting within the hour. Leaders from every nation gathered in a massive conference room, their faces filled with anxiety. General Marcus Hale, the commander of Earth's defense forces, stood at the front, his expression grim. "We have no choice," General Hale began, his voice heavy. "We must respond. The Draconians are not here for diplomacy. We are dealing with a ruthless empire, and if we do not fight, Earth will fall." A wave of murmurs swept across the room. Some leaders were terrified, others were ready to make a stand. But it was clear to everyone that the chances of survival were slim. Earth's military strength was nothing compared to the Draconians' advanced technology. In a bold move, the United Nations decided to send a response. Earth's leaders crafted a message of defiance, one that would show the Draconians that humanity was not afraid to fight back. The message was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching the Draconian fleet. It read, "We will not surrender. Earth stands united. If you wish to take this planet, you will have to fight for it." At first, there was silence on the Draconian side. Then a low rumble of laughter echoed through their ships. They had underestimated humanity, believing that the people of Earth would cower at the first sign of danger. They had thought Earth to be a small, insignificant world, a backwater planet with no real means of defense. But the humans had shown them otherwise. The Draconians responded not with words, but with action. Their fleet began to move, slowly at first, and then with incredible speed. Earth's military forces scrambled to respond, launching every available fighter jet and missile defense system. But as the Draconian ships moved closer, it became clear that their technology was far superior. Earth's missiles seemed to vanish into thin air as they approached the Draconian ships, swallowed by strange energy fields that the humans could not understand. Fighter jets were easily swatted out of the sky by invisible forces. It was as if the Draconians could see every move before it was made, anticipating Earth's every defense. On the ground, the people of Earth watched in horror as the first wave of attacks began. Cities were struck by laser beams that burned through buildings like paper. The sky above was filled with the sounds of distant explosions as humanity's best efforts failed to even scratch the surface of the Draconian ships. Earth's leaders, watching from their command centers, realized that they were not just facing an invasion, they were facing an overwhelming force. But Alina refused to give up. She knew that there had to be something more. Humanity was not weak, and if the Draconians had underestimated Earth, they were about to make a huge mistake. "I have an idea," Alina said, standing up from her chair in the observatory. "We need to think differently. We can't fight them head-on, but we can outsmart them. They're relying too much on their technology. We need to find a way to disrupt it." Alina quickly gathered a team of scientists and engineers, working tirelessly to come up with a plan. They had limited time. The Draconians were already attacking major cities, and Earth's defenses were crumbling. But Alina believed that if they could find a way to hack into the Draconian fleet systems, they might be able to turn the tide. "We need to find a weakness," Alina said. "There has to be one." As Earth's leaders scrambled to deal with the invasion, Alina and her team worked around the clock, hoping that somehow, against all odds, they would find a way to stop the Draconians before it was too late. The day the Draconian fleet entered Earth's orbit felt like the universe had shifted. It wasn't just a military threat. It was a statement, a warning to all the stars that Earth was now the target. The ships appeared as dark, shadowy figures against the bright blue sky, casting an unnatural shadow over the entire planet. It was a sight that both terrified and amazed those who looked up. Never before had Earth faced such an overwhelming force. From the command center in Geneva, General Marcus Hale watched the feed from Earth's satellites. The Draconians' fleet stretched far beyond the horizon. Dozens of massive ships clustered together in perfect formation. The largest of them was the size of a small moon, its dark metal surface gleaming ominously in the sunlight. "This is it," General Hale muttered, his voice tight with worry. "We've lost contact with the outer satellites. They'd gone dark." At the same time, in the Earth Space Observatory, Dr. Elena Kaur analyzed the data pouring in from her station. The Draconian fleet wasn't just large, it was coordinated, moving with precision. Their ships had already blocked off every exit point, leaving no room for escape. The defensive systems Earth had hoped would protect them were useless against this level of technology. "Is there any way we can fight back?" Elena whispered, staring at the large holographic map in front of her. Earth's missile defense systems, space stations, and fighter jets were completely outmatched. The Draconians hadn't even launched an attack yet, but Elena knew it was only a matter of time. Over the course of the next few hours, the world's worst fears began to unfold. Cities across the planet went dark as the Draconians unleashed a pulse of energy that disabled nearly all of Earth's electrical systems. Airplanes fell from the sky. Power grids shut down. It was as if Earth had been plunged into a blackout. The chaos on the ground was immediate. People panicked. Governments struggled to keep order. Earth's military, already on high alert, found themselves powerless against the unseen enemy that had crippled their technology. In the United Nations War Room, leaders gathered to discuss their options. The room buzzed with urgent voices and conflicting opinions. Some wanted to negotiate with the Draconians, hoping to avoid further bloodshed. Others wanted to retaliate, even if it meant using Earth's nuclear arsenal. But General Hale remained calm, knowing that any response now could be disastrous. "Elena," General Hale said, his voice steady despite the situation. "We need a solution. Do you have anything? Anything at all?" Elena took a deep breath. She'd been working nonstop, trying to find a way to counter the Draconian advantage. Her mind was spinning with possibilities, but none seemed promising. Their technology was so far ahead of Earth's that any direct attack was doomed to fail. Yet there had to be something. Humans were known for their creativity, their ability to think outside the box. Elena knew that if there was a way to outsmart the Draconians, she would find it. "I've been analyzing their systems," Elena replied, her voice growing more determined. "Their ships are highly advanced, but they're not perfect. There's a way we might be able to disrupt their energy fields. If we can overload their systems, even for a moment, we might have a chance." General Hale nodded, his eyes focused on the screen in front of him. "We'll take that chance. I'll get the military to back you up. Whatever it takes." Over the next few days, Earth's scientists, engineers, and military forces worked together in a race against time. They developed a plan based on Alina's theory, a method to trigger a surge of electromagnetic energy strong enough to cause a temporary malfunction in the Draconian ships. It wasn't a perfect plan, and the risk was enormous. But it was all they had. Meanwhile, the Draconians continued their silent watch over Earth. They hadn't launched their final attack yet, as if waiting for humanity to make the first move. This unnerving stillness was the most dangerous part of all. It was as if the Draconians were testing Earth, seeing how far they could push before humanity broke. In a hidden underground facility in the Swiss Alps, Alina stood before a large control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. The plan was in place. The necessary satellites had been launched. All they had to do was wait for the right moment. The tension was palpable. For the first time in human history, Earth was not fighting against one enemy, but an entire empire. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming odds, Alina could feel something rising inside her, something fierce and unbreakable. Humanity might be outgunned and outmatched, but they weren't without hope. "They think we're weak," Alina whispered to herself as she glanced at the countdown on the screen. "But they don't know what it means to be human." The first part of the plan was set into motion. Earth's hidden satellites began to broadcast a signal that would target the Draconian fleet's energy shields. If everything worked as planned, the shields would weaken for just a few moments, enough for humanity to strike. As the seconds ticked away, the world waited. Would Earth's counterattack work? Or would the Draconians crush humanity under their heel? Only time would tell. The days that followed the first attempt to fight back were filled with tension. The Draconian fleet continued to loom over Earth, their ships blocking out the sky and casting long shadows over the planet. The calm before the storm was unsettling. Earth's leaders and military officials waited for a counterattack that never came. The Draconians had not made a move since the initial show of power, but their silence was more terrifying than any battle. In the control room of the United Nations Global Defense Headquarters, General Marcus Hale stood at the front, watching the live satellite feeds. The planet's cities were still in darkness. Most of the world's technology was still offline. He felt a sense of dread grow within him. Earth's defenses had been overwhelmed so quickly, and now there was nothing left to do but wait for the inevitable. "What are they waiting for?" General Hale muttered to himself. In the Earth Space Observatory, Dr. Alina Kaur worked tirelessly, scanning the data from the satellites. She had been awake for almost 72 hours, and her eyes were bloodshot, but she didn't care. She had to find something, anything, that could help them. And then, just as she thought she might be missing something, she saw it. A strange pattern. The Draconian fleet was not behaving as expected. Ships were vanishing from the radar. At first, she thought it was a glitch in the system, but the disappearances continued. One by one, Draconian ships seemed to fade away, their signatures vanishing as if they never existed. The ships didn't explode, and they didn't flee. They simply disappeared, as though they had been erased from space. "Alina," a voice called from the doorway. It was Mark, one of the engineers working with her. "You need to see this." Alina turned, her heart pounding in her chest. She followed Mark to another screen, where a different set of data was displayed. It was the same thing. Ships were disappearing. Large ships, powerful ships that had been part of the Draconian fleet. Each time one vanished, it left no trace. No explosion, no debris. Nothing. "This doesn't make any sense," Alina whispered, her voice shaking. "They can't just vanish like this. There has to be a reason." Mark looked equally confused. Could it be some kind of cloaking device? Maybe they have technology we don't understand. Elena shook her head. It's not that. Cloaking devices don't work like this. These ships are just disappearing. She sat down at her console, trying to process the information. Could it be some kind of new weapon? Something the Draconians were using to confuse Earth's sensors? Or perhaps the fleet was being sabotaged by someone else? As Elena continued to analyze the data, something else caught her attention. The remaining Draconian ships seemed to be acting strangely. Their movements were erratic, as though the crew members aboard them were no longer in control. The ships would drift aimlessly for a while, then suddenly change course, as though responding to some external force. It was almost as if they were being controlled by an invisible hand. Back in the United Nations Command Center, General Hale and his advisors were growing more frustrated. They had lost contact with several key military units that had been stationed around the globe. Some of the most advanced defense systems had simply stopped working. But it wasn't just Earth's technology that was failing. The Draconians were experiencing strange problems of their own. Reports started coming in from around the world. Draconian soldiers stationed in major cities were reporting strange visions and hearing unsettling noises. Some claimed to see shadows moving where there should have been nothing. Others spoke of strange flashes of light that disoriented them, making it difficult to focus. "General," one of the officers said, breaking into his thoughts, "we're receiving reports of Draconian ships being abandoned. They're disappearing." Hale's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, disappearing? Are they retreating?" "No, sir. They're just gone. Completely gone. No trace, no wreckage. Nothing." For a moment, Hale stood speechless, trying to comprehend what was happening. The Draconians, the most advanced and feared species in the galaxy, were now losing control of their own fleet. It didn't make sense, and yet the evidence was undeniable. "We need answers," Hale said. "Get me Elena. Now." Back at the Earth Space Observatory, Elena had a similar theory forming in her mind. She was running simulations, attempting to test out her hypothesis. Could it be that something was interfering with the Draconian fleet, something beyond Earth's technology? But what could it be? Who was powerful enough to mess with the Draconians, and why hadn't they revealed themselves? "Mark," Elena called, turning to the engineer beside her. "There's one possibility I've been considering. What if there's an outside force at play here? Something or someone is disrupting the Draconians' fleet. They're not vanishing because of us. They're being attacked by something, or someone." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You mean another alien species?" "I'm not sure," Elena said slowly. "But it's possible. We need to find out who, or what, is behind this." The mystery deepened. The Draconian fleet, once unstoppable, was now facing something even more dangerous than they could have imagined. And the only question that remained was, who, or what, was making the Draconians disappear? These strange disappearances of the Draconian fleet were not just a mystery. They were a sign of something far greater. Elena and General Hale, both puzzled by the sudden shift in the Draconians' behavior, continued to investigate. What had begun as a simple invasion had turned into an enigma that no one on Earth could fully comprehend. Elena sat in her small lab, her eyes glued to the glowing screens in front of her. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, analyzing every bit of data that had come through in the past few hours. The Draconian fleet's ships were vanishing at an alarming rate, and whatever was causing it, it was not the work of any human technology. "There's no way this is a coincidence," Elena muttered under her breath. "Something or someone else is controlling the fleet." As she continued her research, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together. Elena's mind raced as she considered the possibilities. Was it another alien race, or something far more dangerous, something that even the Draconians feared? Meanwhile, General Hale had been briefed on the situation and had come to the same conclusion. It was clear that Earth was not the only one caught in the middle of a struggle for control of the galaxy. But who, or what was behind the Draconian fleet's sudden failure. At a secure location deep within the Swiss Alps, Alina and General Hale met to discuss the situation in person. A group of top scientists and military leaders had gathered to strategize their next move. Alina, General Hale began, his voice steady. We've tried everything we can think of to stop the Draconians, but they're not responding like we expected. Something is changing, and I need you to help us figure out what's happening. Alina nodded thoughtfully. The Draconians are being attacked by someone. I believe that an outside force is interfering with their fleet, and if we don't understand what's happening, we'll be caught off guard. There was a heavy silence in the room as the weight of Alina's words settled over the group. An outside force. The implications were terrifying. It was one thing to face the Draconians, but another to face an unknown enemy that could destroy them from within. We've been monitoring their movements, but nothing seems to make sense, Alina continued. Their ships are disappearing, but there's no sign of a weapon or technology that we can identify. The only thing we know for sure is that this force is not from Earth. At that moment, a young officer entered the room, looking flustered. General, Alina, you need to see this. The officer led them to a large screen showing live footage from the southern hemisphere. What they saw was beyond anything they had expected. In the sky, a strange light appeared, one that seemed to pulse with energy. It was unlike anything Earth's telescopes had captured before. The light glowed brightly, flickering in and out like a signal. It seemed to be coming from a location just beyond the Draconian fleet. That's the source, Alina whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. Whatever is controlling the Draconians, it's coming from there. General Hale turned to the officer. Get me a team. We need to investigate that signal immediately. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we can't let it go unchecked. As the officer rushed off to carry out his orders, Alina stared at the glowing signal on the screen. This could be it, she said quietly. Whoever or whatever is behind this, we need to find them before the Draconians regroup. We don't know their full power, but if they join forces with this new force, Earth may not stand a chance. The team began preparations for a mission to track down the mysterious signal. As they launched their ships, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far beyond their understanding. The Draconians were not the only threat anymore. Earth was caught in the middle of a much bigger game, one that involved forces unknown to humanity. The journey to locate the source of the signal was long and perilous. As the ships moved closer to the strange light, the crew could feel the intensity of the energy that surrounded them. The closer they got, the more powerful the signal became, almost like a magnetic force pulling them in. After hours of travel, they reached a remote area far beyond Earth's orbit. The signal grew louder, more intense. It wasn't just a light. It was a communication. And then, without warning, the ship's screens flickered to life, revealing a mysterious figure. The being on the screen had a humanoid shape but was completely cloaked in shadow. Only its eyes, glowing a bright blue, were visible. The voice that followed was deep, resonating with power. Earth, the voice said, you are not alone. The Draconians are not the only ones who seek control over this galaxy, but you have been chosen. Chosen to stand against them. The crew listened in stunned silence. Was this an ally or yet another force seeking to dominate? I am the Watcher, the figure continued. I have been observing your world for centuries. The Draconians are just one part of a larger war, one that has been fought across the stars. I have intervened to ensure the survival of your species. Alina's heart raced. You've been helping us. The Watcher's eyes flickered. I have been guiding you from the shadows. And now you must make your choice. Will you stand against the Draconians, or will you fall like all the others? The transmission ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving the crew in stunned silence. General Hale turned to Alina. What does this mean for us? Are we allies, or are we being used? Alina's mind spun. The Watcher had spoken of a larger war, but what did that mean for Earth? One thing was certain. They were no longer fighting just for survival. They were part of something much bigger. And the real battle was just beginning. The crew stood in silence, the weight of the Watcher's message hanging heavily in the air. For the first time since the Draconian fleet had appeared, there was a flicker of hope. But with that hope came even more questions. Who was the Watcher? Why had they been observing Earth for so long? And most importantly, what was the larger war they had spoken of? Elena, still processing the conversation, stood at the front of the ship's command deck. The flickering light from the mysterious signal outside painted her face in soft, eerie hues. She had no answers yet, but the sense that they were at the edge of something monumental filled her mind. "We need to make a decision," General Hale said, breaking the silence. "If the Watcher is on our side, we need to know how to move forward. We don't have time to waste." Elena nodded, her thoughts racing. The Watcher spoke of a larger war, one that spans the stars. If the Draconians are just a part of it, then there must be other factions involved. The question is, what role does Earth play in all of this? "We have to assume the Watcher is telling the truth," Hale said, his voice calm but firm. "We've already seen that the Draconians are not the only threat we face, and if we're involved in something bigger, we need to be ready." The decision was made. They would follow the Watcher's guidance and find out what the larger war truly meant. But that didn't make the path ahead any clearer. They were stepping into the unknown, and the risks were higher than ever before. As Earth's first fleet of ships prepared to launch towards the location where the Watcher had guided them, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It wasn't fear, at least, not the kind she was used to. This was something deeper, something that made her wonder if humanity was ready for what lay ahead. The fleet, now a small collection of Earth's best ships, flew toward a distant star system, the source of the Watcher's mysterious signal. The journey would take several days, and in that time, the crew prepared themselves for whatever awaited them. But as they approached their destination, the energy from the signal grew stronger. Elena watched the readings with a sense of awe. It was as if the entire region of space was alive, humming with energy. The Watcher's message had warned them that they were not the only ones who had caught the attention of this larger war. "We're getting close," said the officer in charge of navigation, his voice tense. "Whatever is out there is powerful. We're approaching a system that doesn't appear on any of our maps." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "How is that possible?" The officer shrugged. "It's almost as if it's been hidden from us, blocked from our sensors." General Hale stood next to Elena, his eyes focused on the star system ahead. "This is it. We're entering unknown territory now." The ships slowly entered the system, and what they found was beyond anything they could have imagined. In the center of the system, there was a massive structure, far larger than anything Earth had ever seen. It wasn't a natural formation. This was clearly artificial. A giant space station, or perhaps a city, floating in the emptiness of space. It looked ancient, yet strangely advanced. The energy from the signal was emanating from the heart of the structure. Elena's mind raced. This is it. This must be where the Watcher is. We've found the heart of the war. The crew could only stare at the enormous structure before them. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The scale of it made Earth's space stations look like mere toys in comparison. "We need to approach with caution," General Hale ordered. "We don't know what's inside, and we're not sure who, or what, is waiting for us." The ships moved forward slowly, their engines humming softly as they made their way toward the station. The closer they got, the more the station seemed to shimmer, as though it was alive. Elena's excitement grew, but so did her sense of fear. Whatever was inside this structure, it was tied to the future of Earth, whether they were ready for it or not. As they reached the station's entrance, a sudden flash of light bathed their ships. It wasn't a harmful light, but it was powerful, almost overwhelming. And then, without warning, the ship's communication system came to life, displaying a message in the same glowing blue font that the Watcher had used. "You have come far, Earthlings. a voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "But the real test begins now. You are not alone in this war, and the choices you make will decide the fate of your world." The crew braced themselves, the tension palpable in the air. It was clear that they had arrived at the heart of something much larger than the Draconian fleet. They weren't just fighting for Earth's survival anymore. They were stepping into a galaxy-wide struggle for control, one where every decision could tip the balance. The voice continued, its tone both warning and inviting. "Enter and prove your worth, or turn back and leave your fate in the hands of others." General Hale turned to Elena. "What do you think? Should we enter?" Elena looked at the massive structure, the unknown danger beyond its walls, and then at her crew. They were the ones who would determine Earth's future. She could feel the weight of that responsibility pressing down on her. It was a choice she knew they had to make, and there was no going back. "We have no choice," Elena said, her voice firm. "We enter. This is our future." And so, with a deep breath, they entered the station, unsure of what awaited them, but knowing that this was the first step in a much larger journey. As the crew entered the massive space station, a sense of awe and trepidation washed over them. The structure was vast. Its walls gleamed with an otherworldly energy, and the air felt thick with the hum of ancient technology. The entire space station seemed alive, its corridors stretching endlessly in every direction. Elena led the way, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice they had heard moments before still echoed in her mind. "Prove your worth," it had said. But prove their worth to whom? And how? These questions hung heavy in her mind, but there was no turning back. They had already crossed the threshold. General Hale walked beside her, his expression unreadable. His experience in military operations had taught him to always be prepared for the unknown, but even he couldn't have anticipated what they were about to face. He turned to Elena. "Stay sharp. Whatever happens next, we need to stick together." Elena nodded, her resolve strengthening. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders, but she knew one thing for certain: they would not back down. Not now, not after everything they had faced. The team moved through the station's corridors, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Every now and then, they caught glimpses of strange symbols and alien technology embedded in the walls. There were no signs of life, no creatures or beings to guide them, only the quiet hum of the station and the feeling that someone, was watching them. As they continued forward, a door at the end of the corridor slid open, revealing a large chamber. The walls were covered in intricate designs, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal. On the pedestal lay a single object, a small glowing orb. The light from the orb pulsed gently, casting eerie shadows across the room. Elena approached the pedestal cautiously, her eyes never leaving the orb. It felt like a test, a challenge laid before them by whatever force controlled the station. The voice from before had spoken of proving their worth, and this orb seemed to be the key. But what would happen if they touched it? "Do you think we're supposed to take it?" asked one of the officers, his voice hesitant. Elena took a deep breath. "I don't know, but we have to try." This could be the only way to understand what the Watcher meant. As her fingers brushed the surface of the orb, a bright light filled the room, blinding them for a moment. The light faded quickly, and when it did, they found themselves no longer standing in the chamber, but in an entirely different place. The surroundings were vast and open, like a starry void stretching infinitely in every direction. There was no up or down, only the feeling of floating in space. In front of them stood a figure, one they recognized. It was the Watcher, its glowing blue eyes fixed on them. "You have chosen," the Watcher's voice echoed, as though coming from every direction at once. "But now you must understand the price of your choice." Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. "What is this place, and why are we here?" The Watcher's eyes flickered with a knowing expression. "This is the heart of the war, the place where all decisions are made. This is where the fate of galaxies is shaped. And now it is your turn to decide." General Hale's voice was firm. Decide. What do we have to decide? The Watcher raised a hand, and a vision appeared before them. It was of the galaxy, but not the one they knew. This galaxy was teeming with conflict, hundreds of factions, each vying for control. But among them, one stood out. The Draconians. Their ships were now aligned with an even greater force, a mysterious power that dwarfed anything Earth had faced. The Draconians are only a part of the greater war, the Watcher explained. They are seeking dominance, but they are not the only ones. There are other forces at play, each with their own agenda. Some seek to protect the galaxy. Others seek to destroy it. Elena's mind raced. And where do we fit in? What is our role in all of this? The Watcher's gaze softened. You are the wild card. The unknown. Humanity's potential is untapped. Your choices will either tip the balance in favor of those who wish to protect the galaxy, or those who seek to destroy it. For a moment, silence fell over the group. The weight of the decision was enormous. They were not just fighting for Earth anymore. They were part of a larger struggle, one that would determine the future of the entire galaxy. The decisions they made now would echo through the stars. General Hale spoke again, his voice steady but resolute. We will not let Earth fall. We will fight, but we need your help. The Watcher nodded. Your strength lies in your unity. But remember, you will not be alone. There are others who will join your cause. Some of them are already on their way. Elena's heart raced. The thought of other allies, other species, joining their fight was both a relief and a concern. Who could they trust in this vast galaxy of unknowns? You have much to learn, the Watcher said. But time is short. The war is already underway. The choices you make will determine how it ends. The vision faded, and once again, the crew was standing in the chamber. The orb had disappeared, leaving only the silence behind. Do you believe it? One of the officers asked quietly. Elena looked around at her team. She saw determination in their eyes, the same fire that had carried them through every challenge so far. They were ready, even if they didn't fully understand what lay ahead. We don't have a choice, Elena said softly. We've come too far to turn back now. General Hale nodded in agreement. Then we move forward. We fight for the galaxy, and we fight for Earth. And so, with the weight of the galaxy's future on their shoulders, the crew of Earth's ships set forth, ready to face the unknown, ready to stand against the Draconians, and all the forces that threatened to tear the galaxy apart.